Which era was more brutal? Ancient Rome, the medieval age, or the modern world? Most people think we've evolved past the worst of it, that humanity got better, kinder, more civilized. They're wrong. The methods changed, the scale got bigger, and in some ways, we got worse. This is a journey through 5 of humanity's darkest chapters, from the blood-soaked sands of the Colosseum to wars fought with invisible code. Let's begin. 80 AD, Rome. The Colosseum opens its doors for the first time. 80,000 Romans pack the stands, screaming for blood before the first sword is even drawn. Emperor Titus raises his hand. The crowd goes silent. And then, the killing starts. The inaugural games lasted 100 days straight. 100 days of non-stop slaughter. Historians estimate 9,000 animals were killed in the first week alone. Lions, elephants, hippos, bears imported from the frozen edges of Germania, giraffes shipped from Africa, all butchered for applause. Some animals were pitted against each other, others were hunted by professional beast slayers called venatores. The crowd kept score, but the animals were just the warm-up act. The main event was always human. Gladiators, most of them slaves, prisoners of war, or condemned criminals, trained in special schools called ludi. They didn't choose this life. They were stripped of their names, given stage names, and taught to kill with precision, or die trying. The average gladiator fought 15 bouts before dying. Some lasted longer, most didn't. And it wasn't just men. The historian Cassius Dio recorded that women were forced to fight. Dwarfs were thrown into the arena against each other for laughs. Emperor Commodus once had disabled citizens, rounded up, dressed as mythical creatures, and clubbed them to death personally, in front of 80,000 cheering spectators for entertainment. They even flooded the arena, millions of gallons of water pumped in through underground channels, turning the Colosseum into a lake. Then they put prisoners on ships and made them fight naval battles to the death. They called it naumachia. Thousands drowned while the crowd ate grapes and placed bets. The numbers are staggering. Over 5 centuries of games, an estimated 500,000 people died on that sand. 500,000 human beings killed for sport. And the crowd loved every second of it. Thumbs up meant mercy. Thumbs down meant finish him. Your life decided by the mood of a stranger eating bread. The Colosseum even had a special gate. They called it the Porta Libertinensis, the Gate of Death. Every body dragged through it, every pool of blood raked over with fresh sand, so the next fight could begin. Underneath the arena, in dark tunnels called the hypogum, the next batch of victims waited, listening to the screams above them, knowing their turn was coming. Rome didn't see this as cruelty. They saw it as civilization, public entertainment, a gift from the emperor to his people. The more blood, the more generous the ruler appeared. And for 500 years, nobody questioned it. The screaming was just background noise. But Rome eventually fell. And what came after was somehow worse. When the Roman Empire collapsed, Europe didn't get more civilized. It got creative. Medieval torture wasn't just punishment. It was performance art. And the whole town was invited to watch. The rack, simple concept. Strap a person down by their wrists and ankles. Turn the crank. Their arms and legs slowly pull apart until the joints pop out of their sockets with a wet crack that echoed off the dungeon walls. The sound alone was enough to make witnesses confess to crimes they didn't commit. That was the point. Confession was the goal, not truth. The Inquisition used the rack on thousands of suspected heretics. Most confessed after the first turn, The ones who didn't lost their arms. Then there was the breaking wheel. You'd be tied spread eagle on a large wooden wheel, and an executioner would use an iron hammer to systematically shatter every major bone in your body. Arms first, then legs, then ribs, each blow precise. Calculated, after your limbs were broken, they'd weave them through the spokes of the wheel. Then they'd hoist it up on a pole and leave you there, alive. If you were lucky, the executioner had been bribed to aim for the chest early, a killing blow disguised as mercy. If not, you could survive for days, left on display for crows to feed on while you were still breathing, still blinking. Public executions were holidays. Entire families came out. Vendors sold food and ale. Children sat on their parents' shoulders for a better view. In 1305, William Wallace was hanged, drawn, and quartered in London. They stripped him naked, dragged him through the streets behind a horse for miles, hanged him by the neck until almost dead, cut him down while he was still conscious. Then they sliced open his stomach, pulled out his intestines, and burned them in front of his face while he watched. Then they cut off his head. Then they hacked his body into 4 pieces and sent them to 4 different cities across Britain as a warning. The whole process took hours. Joan of Arc, 19 years old, burned alive in Rouen in 1431. The executioner was ordered to set the fire low, so it would take longer. She was tied to a tall pillar, so the crowd could watch every moment. Witnesses said she screamed for Jesus over and over until the smoke finally took her voice. Then she burned for another 30 minutes. Afterward, they raked back the coals to show the crowd her charred body, proof she was dead. Then they burned her a second time to make sure nothing was left to be worshipped. The French Revolution promised to fix all of this. The guillotine was designed by a doctor, supposed to be humane, quick, painless, one clean cut. Instead, it became a machine of mass execution. During the Reign of Terror in 1793 and 1794, up to 40 people a day lost their heads. The blade fell so often that the executioner's assistants had to mop blood between sessions. The cobblestones around the scaffold were permanently stained red. Baskets of heads were carted away like garbage, but medieval cruelty was limited by technology. You could only kill as fast as human hands could swing an axe or turn a crank. The 20th century removed that limitation entirely. Before the modern horrors began, the 14th century nearly ended humanity first. 1347. A Genoese trading ship docks in the port of Messina, Sicily. The sailors on board are dying. Some are already dead. Black swellings the size of eggs cover their bodies, oozing blood and pus. The harbor master tries to quarantine the ship. Too late, the rats have already left. The Black Death, bubonic plague, carried by fleas living on black rats, that nested in the grain holds of every trade ship crisscrossing the Mediterranean. The very network that made medieval civilization possible, the trade routes connecting London to Constantinople to Cairo, became the highway for its destruction. You'd feel a headache first, then chills, then a fever that felt like your blood was boiling. Then the buboes appeared, massive swollen lymph nodes in your groin, armpit, or neck that could grow to the size of an apple. They turned black. They wept. They burst. Your extremities went gangrenous, fingers and toes turning black and falling off. You bled from your mouth, your nose, your eyes, and then you died, usually within 3 to 5 days of the first symptom. In 4 years, the plague killed between 75 and 200 million people across Europe, Asia, and North Africa. Some estimates say it wiped out 60% of Europe's entire population. Think about that. 6 out of every 10 people you know, dead. Cities that had 10,000 residents woke up with 2,000. Parish records from English villages show weeks where every single entry is a death. No births, no marriages, just death after death after death. There weren't enough living to bury the dead. Bodies piled in the streets, in houses, in churches where people had crawled to die. Mass graves were dug and filled overnight. In some cities, they just threw the bodies into the river. The Rhone River in France was consecrated by the Pope, so that bodies dumped into it would count as having a Christian burial. Entire villages simply ceased to exist. You can still find them today. Ghost settlements across the English countryside and rural France. Foundations of buildings poking through the grass. No survivors, no descendants, no one left to remember who lived there. And while plague ate the population alive, war consumed what was left. The 100 Years' War between England and France turned the continent into a killing field. At Agincourt in 1415, English longbowmen fired so many arrows that the sky went dark. French knights in full-plate armor sank into the muddy field and drowned while arrows punched through their visors from above. Then came the famine. The Great Famine of 1315 started before the plague. 3 consecutive years of failed harvests caused by relentless rain. Crops rotted in the fields, people ate cats, dogs, bark stripped from trees, grass, leather. There are documented cases of cannibalism in Ireland, the Baltic states, and Poland. Parents eating dead children, prisoners eating their cellmates. The 14th century was a dress rehearsal for the end of the world. Nature showed what it could do with disease and starvation. But the 20th century proved that humans could do far worse, deliberately and efficiently. The 20th century was supposed to be different. We had electricity, telephones, automobiles, airplanes. We were modern, enlightened, and then we industrialized murder. 1915. The Ottoman Empire decides to solve its Armenian problem. 1.5 million Armenians, systematically rounded up, marched into the Syrian desert and left to die. The men were separated first, taken behind buildings and shot in groups. The women, children, and elderly were forced to walk hundreds of miles through barren desert with no food and no water. Those who collapsed were left where they fell. Those who survived the march were herded into camps where they starved. The word genocide didn't even exist yet. Raphael Lemkin had to coin the term decades later because what happened to the Armenians had no name. The world barely noticed. It was busy fighting its own war. 20 million dead in World War I. But that was just the appetizer. Then came the Holocaust. 6 million Jews, plus 5 million Roma, disabled people, political prisoners, homosexuals, and Soviet POWs. 11 million total. Nazi Germany didn't just kill people, they built factories designed specifically for killing. Assembly lines of death. Auschwitz-Birkenau alone had the capacity to gas 6,000 people per day. The trains ran on schedule. The paperwork was meticulous. IBM punch card machines catalogued the victims by name, age, and method of death. It was genocide, with industrial efficiency. The gas chambers used Zyklon B, hydrogen cyanide pellets originally manufactured as a pesticide. Guards would pour them through holes in the ceiling. It took 15 to 20 minutes for everyone inside to die. The people closest to the vents died first. Those furthest away climbed over the bodies of the dead, trying to reach air that wasn't there anymore. They clawed the concrete walls until their fingers were worn to the bone. After the screaming stopped, Sonderkommando workers, themselves prisoners, pulled out the bodies, extracted gold teeth with pliers, shaved the hair off corpses, which was shipped to German factories and used to stuff mattresses and make rope. Nothing was wasted. Everything was documented, and the world said, never again. Then it happened again. Rwanda, April 6, 1994. A plane carrying the Rwandan president is shot down. Within hours, the killing begins. 800,000 Tutsi men, women, and children murdered in 100 days. That's 8,000 killings per day, 5 every minute, mostly with machetes. The killers were neighbors, teachers, priests. One Catholic church in Nyamata became a slaughterhouse. 10,000 people who sought sanctuary inside were hacked to death. The pews are still stained brown. Radio stations broadcast kill lists, names and addresses, where specific families lived, what cars they drove. Roadblocks were set up to check identity cards. Tutsi on one side, death on the other. The United Nations had 2,500 peacekeepers on the ground. They were ordered not to intervene. The French government, which had trained the Rwandan military, did nothing. In 100 days, more people were killed than in the atomic bombings of Hiroshima and Nagasaki combined. The 20th century proved something the gladiators and medieval executioners never could: that with modern technology and bureaucratic systems, ordinary people can commit extraordinary evil at industrial scale on a Tuesday and be home for dinner. And now, the battlefield has no battlefield, no blood on the ground, no bodies to count, just code. Ones and zeros, capable of bringing nations to their knees without firing a single shot. June 2010. Cybersecurity researchers in Belarus discover a piece of malware unlike anything they've ever seen. They name it Stuxnet. It's less than half a megabyte in size, 15,000 lines of code, smaller than a photograph, and it was built to destroy physical infrastructure. Stuxnet didn't target bank accounts or steal passwords. It targeted centrifuges, specifically the ones spinning uranium hexafluoride gas at Iran's Natanz nuclear facility. The worm exploited 4 separate zero-day vulnerabilities, flaws in Windows that nobody knew existed. It spread through USB drives, jumping from computer to computer, silently searching for one specific type of industrial controller made by Siemens. When it found its target, it took control. It told the centrifuges to spin at 1400 Hertz, way beyond their safe operating speed. Then it slowed them to 2 Hertz, then sped them up again, over and over. The centrifuges vibrated, wobbled, tore themselves apart from the inside. Meanwhile, the monitoring systems showed everything was normal. The operators had no idea their equipment was destroying itself. Iran's nuclear program was set back by an estimated 2 to 3 years. 1,000 centrifuges destroyed. No bombs dropped, no soldiers deployed, no declaration of war, no fingerprints, just code. And the damage was done. It was later attributed to a joint US-Israeli operation called Olympic Games, the first time a cyber weapon caused physical destruction to another nation's infrastructure. And it opened Pandora's box. If code could destroy centrifuges, what else could it destroy? In May 2007, Estonia found out, one of the most digitally connected countries on Earth, a nation that conducted voting, banking, and government services almost entirely online, was hit by a massive wave of coordinated cyber attacks. Banks went offline. Government websites crashed. News outlets went dark. Hospital systems slowed to a crawl. The entire country's digital nervous system was paralyzed for 3 weeks. The attacks came from Russian IP addresses, timed to a political dispute over the relocation of a Soviet war memorial. Russia denied involvement. Nothing was ever proven. No bullets, no tanks, no troops crossed any border. An entire nation brought to its knees by fake internet traffic. This is the new warfare. A teenager in a basement with the right exploit can cause more damage than a battalion of soldiers. Power grids can be shut down from another continent. Hospital ventilators can be held for ransom, and they have been. Elections can be manipulated with bot farms and deepfakes. Water treatment plants can be poisoned remotely. And in 2021, someone tried exactly that in Oldsmar, Florida. A hacker accessed the system and tried to increase sodium hydroxide levels to 100 times the normal amount. A worker caught it in time. Barely. There are no Geneva Conventions for cyberspace, no rules of engagement, no uniforms, no way to know who's attacking until the damage is done. And the weapons get more sophisticated every single day. Ancient Rome killed with swords. The medieval age killed with wheels and fire. The 20th century killed with gas and machetes. And now, we kill with keystrokes. The methods change. The brutality doesn't. So which era was more brutal? Rome turned murder into sport. The medieval age turned it into art. The 20th century turned it into industry. And today, we've turned it invisible. 500,000 dead in the Colosseum, 200 million from plague, 11 million in the Holocaust, 800,000 in Rwanda in 100 days. And now, wars fought with code you'll never see coming. The tools evolve. Human nature doesn't. If this kept you watching, subscribe to Dark Weird Facts, because history's darkest chapters are the ones we need to remember most.